Awesome. Well, a big warm welcome back to another episode of Church Talk. And I hope you've been enjoying these episodes as much as we have. It's just been so much fun. And thanks so much for watching and sharing and being part of it with us. And today we are back at it again. And we are talking about something really close to my heart. I think something super important as we've continued to just have these conversations with a few of our amazing dream team. Today we're actually zooming into the team itself. And how do you create a healthy staff culture within your team? And so with me are two very special people, and it's actually super fun that we get to do this. First of all, ladies first, is Tarryn, who is my wife, which is amazing that we get to do this together. And so one of the many hats that Tarryn wears is operations director. And so staff and staff culture is a big part of that. And that's just been one of the greatest blessings that we're able to do that together as a team. And then over on this side, also just as amazing, has been a huge blessing, being able to do ministry and leadership and staff and stuff with certainly an amazing friend, one of my closest friends. And it's just been an amazing part of the journey is to be able to do this together with Duncan Earley. And one of the caps that Duncan wears on our team is staff development. And so we just wanted to jump into that. I think it is probably the most important thing to get right as a church is to get a healthy culture on your staff team. And I think we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. We've been blessed in it. And so we'd love to chat through that. And so we're going to jump straight in. And Dunks, I'm going to start with you. What do you think, the staffs exist everywhere. Every organization, every company will have staff. What makes staff at a church different?
It is exceptionally different. So there's so much you can learn that I think play and transfer across depending on, doesn't matter what team you're talking about. But a church staff is something special, and we see it like that. We count it as a privilege because it is special. But it's different in a couple of ways. First of all, it's different in the way of very often the reason someone is on your team, as much as they love it and want to make an impact and leave a legacy and all these things, they are probably there for a salary, whereas our guys are there for a salary, but at the same time, kind of built into ministry is this foundation of calling. Yeah. And so that just changes the context, changes the ecosystem for what a team looks like. I really would not want to lead in the context outside of church because I don't know what I would go to. It's helpful to go back to something like calling, because it gives you a foundation where we're on the same page and we're kind of pulling in the same direction. And there's something far beyond just a paycheck and kind of KPIs or deliverables or whatever like system you have. There's something far beyond that we're actually all pulling towards. And when we talk about things like how do we care for each other, it's not just because I'm caring for you to try get something out of it. It's actually I'm genuinely caring for you because Jesus cares about you too. Yeah. So that's a big difference that I think plays in. I think leadership-wise, it again, that means you just take a very different approach in terms of leadership because it's not just about productivity. That's not what is driving things. You're wanting to see people flourish. You're wanting to see people empowered in their calling specifically and kind of through church as a whole. Yeah. Which is so different. And so there's lots of dynamics there, and it plays out in everything that we do. It plays out in how we go about things. But that also means you don't, throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, we're just never going to focus on how to be productive. We're never going to focus on performance. These are all things that are helpful. And so having a structure, having culture is actually important in terms of how we're getting ownership as a team. And I think that's the kind of thing we've seen. So it's been very, very different. It's all I've ever known, and I'll put that out front. And but I'm glad that it's all I've ever known. To be dead honest.
Yeah. So at the outset, about 4 years ago, taking on the leadership of the church, something that we wanted to be super intentional about right from the outset. Was establishing a really good, solid, healthy staff structure. And we needed to be proactive in that right from the beginning. Because as leadership experts will tell you, you will have a culture in your organization that if you don't define it, it will just morph into whatever it morphs into. And so you have to be proactive in that. And so that was one of our biggest priorities. And I remember introducing something in the first year that we've now done every single year, and that is taking the staff away. And tell us a little bit about what we did in that first year in terms of getting ourselves set up in terms of culture.
Yeah. That was incredible. I just remember going back, sitting in the room where we were, and starting to speak about what would our cultures be, what would the pillars be, and doing it as a team, and so that the team and all of us would take ownership. And I think that was a big thing for us. We sat around a table, threw ideas, threw words around, asked clarifying questions around that table, and eventually we came to a few words that have stuck, and we've placed them on our wall now, and those are what we call our pillars. So I'll just mention what they are. The culture pillars that we've got is we want to be a team who is big picture aware. A team who offers and receives feedback. Really important without taking offense. A team of pioneering spirits.
Come on, that's the best one.
A team who lives out a for you culture, and we've seen that play out in so many areas, which has been incredible. And a team who intentionally leans in. So what we also do for any new staff member that we have, we do an onboarding as well with the new staff member, and they actually get this spoken to them and explained to them. But with culture, it is something they do joke about, saying like a staff culture is caught, not taught. But we do want every staff member, and we ask every staff member who's new to our team to commit to upholding these staff values and live it out, and live out these values. So it's really important for us, just in the role that we're in, to communicate really well to people 100%. That this is what we believe in. And it's something that we also revisit pretty often. We've gone back, asked questions, redefined it.
I think it's definitely a combination of caught and taught. It has to be the whole time. And as you're speaking about having to revisit it, it's like one of those things that leaks, like vision leaks, this leaks as well. And so I think that's been one of the, I personally think it took the better part of 2 years to really start seeing the fruit of our intentionality behind the culture starting to come to life. And I think that's the thing. It's got to be a long process. And what would you say some of the things around how we communicated around that has gone as well?
Yeah, I think Tarryn mentioned the first thing up front. I think if anyone who's wanting to establish culture, the first thing is to get everyone on board, because it's very difficult to impose culture. It's much easier to invite into culture. So as much as we have an established culture already and new people will come into it and we get to take them through that process, when it was literally at establishment level, it was get everyone around a table. And we're not joking, like it literally was everyone from lead pastor to intern was in the room and put all the ideas on a whiteboard. And we had things that were rubbish, to be honest, and things that were like just pie in the sky, and we didn't have to refine it down and work it down even to get it just to the 5 that we have now. So I think that collaboration thing has been such a key, because because collaboration brings ownership. And so that meant everyone had an ownership in this. Like people can point to when we have these little things that connect to a certain pillar, they'll remember, I remember having that conversation. I remember the person who actually first said that. Which helps really then set a strong foundation, because anyone coming into it, it's now not this thing that gets imposed on them. We're kind of invited into it because that's the ecosystem that's been made. But then the other side to it is I think the communication thing has been so important. Like we have had to revisit, redefine, refresh, because this is the thing. You can put words to something, you can put words on a wall, it doesn't matter until it actually gets lived out. And that's probably why, you're right, it did take definitely 2 years, maybe even more, for us to see not only the fruit of it, but even to see our team use the same language that was there. Because you hear a word, I hear a word, we'll probably define it very differently or come from different perspectives or angles. We say, like most people won't get what we're talking about when we're saying we've got a for you culture. Like, what does that even mean? And so it's meant we've had to really like drill down with our team as to what do we mean, define the language that we even have. And then more importantly, the communication that comes out, if you want it to be not just words on a wall, but actually like lived out, it means that then it gets lived out in big moments. And so any formal structure, we're always kind of putting it through this filter of how is this helping or hurting culture.
Right.
But then even almost more importantly, it's the small moments.
Yeah.
Because you can do all that you want in the big moments, but a good example I always bring is like, we love pioneering spirits. And so that means we run on like, the best idea should win. We love new ideas. We're never going to be committed to like, hey, we did it that way last year. That means it has to be done the same this way.
Yeah.
That's never going to be how we roll. And so you could have that as a thing, put it on, and we all scream that and shout that, see it, and have had so many wins in that. And you just need that one moment where someone on your team comes to you with an idea and you shut it down straight away. And you just like already on, like we say, wow, before how. Someone might have a dumb idea, or someone might have an idea that needs refining. That's all good and well, but it's like, we talk about wow before how, like actually we need to honor the idea. Like what does that look like? And it's just that little moment. And it literally matters to a pure like reaction in a conversation as a leader with someone on your team who's got this big idea. What if we did this? And if you shut it down in that moment, I promise you'll kill culture. And pioneering spirit for that person is dead in the water, and it's going to take how long to even revive that thing back to life. So I think we've really looked at what are the big moments, what are the formal things that we do, what are our rhythms that actually play into culture, but even more so, fine-tooth comb. What about the little moments, and how do we build those? And so it's played out in how we do staff meetings. It's played out in how we do staff together moments, how we do staff retreats, obviously, which was our first one where we kind of even put this all together. How we do our staff performance reviews, how we do rhythms of calendar. All of that has actually been kind of fed through the idea of culture and how our team runs. And that's just, it has to be on both levels. It has to be at a high level and then the low level. Otherwise, you're just never going to win.
Yeah. I think for me, I just want to add, it's so intentional. So I think we as you, Duncan, being in charge of staff as well, it's just a very intentional thing that it's on the top of your radar at all times. And we do want people to enjoy the environments, enjoy being together, live out those values. It's so important that people want to be at the office and want to be working together. And that for you culture is incredible. So I just know from experience, very recently, Simon, who's lead pastor, was literally doing parking at a youth event. Duncan was preaching. Like, we've just got so many different roles. Other pastors, we're doing registrations. Nothing's too good for us. We for you, and we're all in, which is so important for everyone to see.
Yeah, I think it's been awesome just to really use those pillars, like you say, to inform everything that we do. And so, we've got a reason behind everything. So, for example, our Monday morning staff meeting is not an operations meeting. It's a celebrations meeting. That's all we do in our Monday morning staff meetings is we celebrate. That's informed by the culture that we're trying to build. It's informed by these. Now, we have other opportunities for other types of meetings, but we've been super intentional. And so everything that we do is through that lens of the culture that we're trying to build. And what I've really enjoyed seeing is as the teams continue to grow and new people getting added to it, I've literally heard conversations happen between staff members who've been around longer than the new ones coming in, and to hear lines like, that's not how we do things here, has started to come out because ownership has, over many months and years, started to take effect. And so once it's strong in you as a staff member who's been around this culture for so long, you start automatically teaching that as well, which I think has been awesome. All right, so that's that. Now, part of culture and part of team and part of staffing inevitably at some point in time is going to involve conflict. Any team that's together long enough is not going to, you're not a team if there's not conflict. And it comes down to how we handle conflict. And so this year at City Hope, I think we're on 33 people on our payroll. That's full-time, part-time, and our retainer positions as well. When there's 33 people in an organization working side by side with each other on a daily basis, inevitably there's going to be some conflict. And so what would you say in terms of managing conflict? Like, how have we managed to healthily walk ourselves through moments like that?
I think before we even get to the conflict kind of management resolution side, I think we've taken very intentional steps in terms of communication and evaluation that has probably caught a lot of conflict before you even get there, even though we have had those moments. So a good example is like our performance reviews. That was a system we've put in the last few years. It didn't really exist before. But even in those kind of moments where it's not necessarily a conflict moment, but it might be a tough conversation, or it might be a coaching moment, or it might be actually, hey, there's a frustration I have, an obstacle I have. Those things come out in a performance review. For us, they catch before we get to conflict. So maybe Tarryn should actually tell you about our performance reviews and actually what they generally look like, because I think it's been a helpful process for us. And it's a very formal thing, but it's this thing of, what gets rewarded gets repeated, which means when we have a moment where we have a tough conversation, and it goes well, and there's progress and growth, people don't get freaked out the next time we have one. Or if conflict now does bubble up and go, our first reaction is not going to be to like eject or pull the handbrake and just exit stage right. Because we've kind of built in a healthy process, like how do we actually have these types of evaluation, constructive, even conflict conversations.
Yeah. I think evaluation is such a good word to use there. We often say we're for the person before function. Yes, function does matter. And especially in these performance reviews, we always start with, how are you doing?
Right.
You as a person, how are you doing? How is your health? How is life? Tell us some things that we might not know about. And if someone's having a bad time, this is their opportunity to tell us, because it actually might explain a few things about why they're acting a certain way or what's going on in their life. And it's just so helpful for us to know how people are doing. And it's really important for us to just also be on top of our staff and just loving and caring for them.
Totally.
So we ask them how they're doing. Then there's also self-evaluations. How are you doing in this area of communication and teamwork? And then sometimes we've also had to ask people who work below them, how would you rate them? I say rate carefully, but what would be some of the things that you would suggest, or are you enjoying, observed? And that's also just been really helpful, because sometimes I might not work with a person. So for me to do the performance review or evaluation, it's a bit hard, because actually I'm just there in, I want to say, management position, but I'm just there fulfilling a function. But there's actually a team below them that know exactly how they're doing, how they've been led, are they enjoying it, have they noticed something, give positive feedback about your line manager, how's that going. So that's why, and it comes back down to one of our pillars, it's communication and feedback. Are we feeding back? And yes, some feedback might not be positive. Mostly it's positive, because we really do have a dream team, just putting it out there. But we really do value feedback from our staff. So that performance evaluation is so good for us.
Totally. And I think it's been the most consistent that I've ever experienced. And that's probably part of the key to it, is it's not like we've decided to do evaluations this year, next year we drop it, we change. It's actually just been consistent over the years in how we've continued to do it, which I think is so important in that.
Yeah, I think that evaluation layer has helped us immensely. It's opened up conversation. It's meant that we've had to get really good at having tough conversations, even when you have to have coaching moments. And then often you can, when there's frustration in the chamber there, because we now have layers of teams and layers of leadership, and you do have new pieces coming in, or things that are getting pioneered, and we have to kind of adjust and adapt along the way. It's opened up the door that we then have been able to have those open conversations and realize if something's not working, we're able to kind of stop it. If there's something that's causing friction or something that's not, we're able to kind of hit it on the front end. But as I always tell people, we're a church staff. We're not robots. We're not angels. There is also just humans in the equation. And that means sometimes conflict's going to bubble over. And we've not had to deal with that. We have had moments where it's been individuals or different teams kind of having friction. When you have 33 people working in the same thing at the same building, same venues and we're in each other's space and there's high stress because now there's so much going on. Our calendar is so jam-packed. Heads are going to bump. I'm going to care so much about the area that I'm working in because it is the most important thing in church, which it should be for me. But it's more important than your thing. Maybe they don't say that. But that, you know, you get into these moments, there's obviously going to be conflict that bubbles up. But one thing I think we've always done well is pull people back to who we are and our culture, that we're for each other, that actually it's the person before function. And so how do we do that? So I think in terms of conflict resolution, I think some of the big things we've learned along the way is, that our view of conflict should never be negative, actually. I know many leaders like hate conflict. They think that's a red flag on their team. A team that's, you know, making up ground is probably going to be like quite stormy, and there'll be lots of things that they're bumping together, and there's going to be issues. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's probably just a byproduct of what the team's trying to build. And so in that, I think our view of conflict is really important, because I think we've taken it at every turn that conflict is actually a moment where we can grow culture. That conflict is actually a moment where we can make progress and grow. And I think we have story upon story of that between individuals or teams or ministries, or just moments where you're like, jeepers, do you remember where we were 6 months ago? Do you remember that? And it's like, now it's a joke that we all can kind of laugh at and move on from. But it just was, it was this positive thing that brought people together, and actually we got to learn and kind of gain some muscle. And tough conversations also matter too. Tough conversations matter in leadership. I say it all the time. I heard it a long time ago. I have lived it out. Tarryn's lived it out. We've all lived it out. The higher you go, the more you go in leadership, the higher your capacity for tough conversations needs to be.
It's true.
And so we've got to have a lot of those. And I think the other thing, not just in terms of our view of conflict, but I think then being in leadership, or perhaps over a team or over people, it's actually your responsibility to address conflict. Because the worst thing you can do is be passive about it. Sometimes there is the moment to just let people sort it out. They're big boys, they're adults, they can sort it out. But there is that moment where you have to be very careful about how, if you let this go too far, and now it starts to like be a poison that just sets in. And that takes some time and experience to know when that is. But when that moment comes, the responsibility is on a leader to jump in and actually not be passive about it, be active, say, let's get in front of each other. And I think we've been super intentional with our team that we're going to put it on the table. We're going to get you into the boardroom. You're going to sit across from each other. We're going to have it. We're going to talk it out point by point. Our staff have always known when there's like a serious meeting, they can see it. It's like, ooh, what's happening? But again, it doesn't have to be this weird thing. I think we're quite open with it. Like, hey guys, there was an issue. It's dealt with and we move on. And then people get to see that. Again, it just builds up these wins to say, these are not things to be scared of or run from. They're actually things that we put value on. And that's kind of played on. I think a big thing and this is Tarryn's heart, because Tarryn does lead with her heart. It's why she cries so much and why she cares so much.
Indeed.
and why
cry a lot.
and why she is as amazing as she is I think timelines have mattered for us. So what's your favorite quote?
Oh, conflict delayed is conflict doubled.
There we go. So we've lived by that in terms of how we've always addressed it, and we've put that into our team. I mean, we've even put it in so deep that a lot of our teams have a 2-week rule. Where if there's an issue, if there's a conflict, if there's whatever it might be, you've got 2 weeks. Like the moment the thing happens, the incident happens, the conversation that you were offended by, or the person who let you down, whatever it was, a clock starts. You got 2 weeks to sort it out, address it. Otherwise, it's on you. You're done. So we'll never enter a meeting where someone comes and says, well, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 2 years ago, you said this. It just doesn't play with us. Like, that's not how it works. Because that's how important and how much we want to value. Because in the midst of conflict, as important as it is, as much as we want to grow from it, unity is more important. And so we want to pull that forward. And I know that's Tarryn's heart, as she has a lot to say on this.
So for me, I always just say to the team or the person having conflict, is God commands unity. So just in Psalm 133, it says how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity.
Amen.
1 Corinthians 1 verse 10 says, agree with one another and let there be no divisions among you. Ephesians 4 verse 3, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit.
You want to preach right now.
I'm telling you.
I thought you were only going to give one.
Pardon?
I thought you were going to give one. You got the multiple coming in.
And but where there is unity, as you said, God commands that blessing.
Exactly. So for me, we can't just have like a staff with disunity, because I feel like that is where Satan can easily get into. And that's why we do have these rules in place of like, timelines matter. Like, you have to sort it out before your heart gets hard towards a person or situation. Like, we don't want that within the team, and we want everyone to work together. So we have to live out what we're saying. We strive to become more Christ-like, and it's reflected in our actions. And we actually need to fight. For me, this is a big thing. We need to fight for unity.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. It's the most important thing. And I think there's just been plenty of examples on our team over the years on how we have very successfully been able to move people towards that. And I think it is well known that it's part of our culture.
Yeah.
We just don't tolerate it. And so that's been a huge thing. And I think the two of you have done an exceptional job within that.
Well, Duncan's led me really well in that, and it's definitely an area I've grown in, because as Duncan's mentioned, I do cry a lot and my heart gets in the way sometimes. But that's where the Lord helps me and is with me in these situations. Yeah. In our one meeting that we had, Duncan put together this brilliant document, which I actually brought along just to like quickly go through it, if you don't mind. But just like helpful reminders, like we're here for one another. It means we're believing the best about each other, even in a conflict situation. Yep. And we hold everything in tension with a greater purpose God has for us as Christians, as a team, and as a church. And these conversations, as hard as conflict is, are hard conversations, but the goal and benefits of the destination is far greater. We want to get to a point of unity. And so we have a few ground rules in place as well, where we work to resolve any conflict. No problem is bigger than our goal. Sure. We treat each other with respect. We attack in the problem, not the people. Yep. So sometimes in those meetings, you also have to keep that at the top of the thing, saying, well, it's not your turn to talk. Let them finish. And you will have your say. We're going to be here for a while. But
sometimes longer than others.
Sometimes.
Well, that person is just throwing out random side comments. Yes. And you're just like, let's not do that.
That's why we implemented the 2-week rule as well. Speak clearly and truthfully. What's bothering you? Do you have solutions? What would help you in this situation? Caring for each other in that meeting, you explain in yourself, you're not pointing the blame finger, and we listen with a desire to understand each other's views, and we understand and respond, and we don't hear and react. Sure. Because that's very quickly can happen. And sometimes it is good to have a mediator in those meetings. Sometimes you can do it one-on-one. Sometimes you do need a mediator with these ground rules in place just to help and take responsibility. We're very, very quick to put the blame on somebody else. Yeah. But there is a level of responsibility that people have to take and be willing to compromise. And it's the whole thing of like the for you culture. Yeah. If they win, I win. If they lose, we all lose. Like it's huge. So this was super helpful. That's great. And we definitely will be using it a lot in the future.
I think the thing we've also learned is, especially when it comes to leadership and like handling any of these types of things, I think most leaders feel like in the realm of culture, it's like their leadership can get overruled or diluted, or they have to be like somehow outside of it. I think we live within the same culture. Sure. And that means we get moments where we get to show that culture. And so that means even showing like a vulnerability in it. And we've had meetings where me and Tarryn have had to go in, and the start of the meeting is us tail between our legs. Guys, we've messed up. We let you down here. Like, honestly, this is on us. Like, and we'll take that on the chin. Here's how we're going to fix it. And just be very upfront and honest. Like, we're not robots. We're going to make mistakes too. Just because we're sitting in an ops director and a ministry director role doesn't mean we now can never be wrong. And then watching how our team responds to that, because they'll see it play out, be super gracious in it, and we sort it out. It matters next time they need to do the same, because they've seen it played out. They've seen it modeled. They've seen it. And so we've seen that in so many different things.
Sure.
And it's been helpful. And the fruit that has come from these meetings, it's just like, you can't explain it. It's just God. Like God has used these situations for his good. And the fruit that comes out of these conversations is always good, healthy fruit.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it stems back to that for you culture, that the reason you'd put in the effort. Because it's easier just not, right? Yeah. From a leadership point of view, it's easier just to not. But the reason you put in the effort is because it's for you culture.
Yeah.
And so, no, that's been absolutely awesome.
It does.
Awesome. Well, if we're chatting to other leaders looking in and maybe other churches and pastors and so on who might be listening in and, maybe you've got one staff member on your team, maybe you've got 10 or 33 or whatever the case is. What would you each say just as we close up this conversation? What would your kind of part in one piece of advice be to a leader who's trying to develop a healthy staff culture in their own organization?
Okay, it's not one piece. I've got a few more.
Ready to go.
But for me, I think never underestimate the power of prayer. Pray about it. Sure. Pray about the situation. Yeah. Pray for the Holy Spirit to guide you. Pray for God to guide you. And that's also my daily prayers, just for more wisdom and for God to guide my steps every single day. And then confession time, it is actually easier for me sometimes to do things in my own strength. Yeah. Because I just know sometimes I can. That's so unhealthy. And I often have to go, why, Tarryn? Like, you're exhausting yourself, taking this on your shoulders. Like, that's not what God wants for me. So for me, I just really do just commit everything to God. And you have to do it. Be intentional about doing that on a daily basis. Yeah. And, wisdom just comes from God alone. God alone is the true, what can I say? God
Source.
is wisdom.
Yeah.
Source is a good word. But then just one other is you're not alone. You're not alone in team. And there's also, people joke about there's no I in team, but there is me. And I read somewhere there is T in team, which makes for a good meeting. But the thing is, God has placed you together with people. I know it's random.
Like, we do coffee, man. I'm just saying.
I do tea. But yeah, like, you can learn so much from others, and don't be afraid to ask for help. So for me, Dunks and I have worked really well in this, but also, like, I think because I've grown, it's actually thanks to Dunks in this. So I appreciate you and being part of the team with you in it. And it's just been so good. If you need help, do it. And just a final thing from me is, like, I really do count it an honor, but it's also such a joy to be part of the team at City Hope Church. Totally. And I really hope and pray that our staff feel the same and that they feel valued and loved and respected. And it's just been such an honor to do what God has called me to do.
Yeah, 100%.
And still growing in it every single day.
100%.
I think for me, the picture I always have, and it matters across leadership, it matters across leading any team. Doesn't matter if it's conflict or growing culture or making decisions, whatever it is. I think and it plays out to what we just heard. Too many leaders just work on reaction and they don't work on response. Yeah. And like, a leader can never be reactive. It never goes well when we actually are reactive. And so the picture I always have is, you have probably got in your hand 10 cards to play in any one moment, in any one situation, decision, conversation, conflict, meeting, whatever it might be. You got those 10 cards, and if we react very often, 99% of the time, you're going to pick the wrong card and play the wrong one. You're going to play hardball in a moment when you should have been soft. You're going to show no compassion when you should have. You actually talked when you should have been quiet and this. Like, you're just going to go down a road. And if you have that picture in your mind as a leader, I think you just realize we actually are called to respond. And that means I'm going to take some time. I'm going to believe God's given me wisdom and prayer and His Spirit in me that's going to give an answer. But experience will also play into it, because I know how it is. I also am going to know the person that I'm talking to, dealing with, how they're going to respond, because you want to get to know your team, that you know what they're going to play with. And then when you play that card, very often we want to be leaders who are like, gung-ho, and let's just make the big active, big leader call. And sometimes it doesn't need that. Sometimes you don't need to come with a big stick. Sometimes you don't need to come down hard in a situation,
right,
or on a person. There's a moment for that, but it's probably far less. Like it's the 10% of the time, and yet we play that card 40% of the time, often as leaders, and we really shouldn't. And so I think the picture is just understand you have 10 different cards you can play. But if you really want to respond, it's going to take some time, prayer, effort, experience, and really thought through as to how I'm doing it. And when you get it wrong, you can say sorry, and that's going to be okay. And you learn from it, and you mess it up and learn along the way. But it just sets up your team that they're comfortable, they're secure, they know what they're going to get from you. You're not going to fly off the handle. That puts a lot of security in them. And then you see great growth across the board.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's so true what you're saying is we haven't arrived in any of these conversations we've been having. It's not like we've arrived, we're still learning as we go. But man, I just want to say thank you so much to the both of you just for that. I think that was some excellent input, and for all that you do in our church and for our team. We thank you and we love you both so much for that. And I hope that was useful for you as well, and you can take some of that and put it into practice in your own organization. It's been so awesome hanging out again tonight. I hope that you enjoyed that there's stuff that you can take and put into use in your own organization. And so please do enjoy this and comment and like and share as far as you can. Don't forget, we've got a whole bunch of free resources for you as well at cityhope.joburg/resources. We'd love for you to make use of that. But otherwise, we'll see you next time on our next episode of Church Talk.